morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, we've got some pretty big news to talk about. You see, poison Pokemon are getting all mixed up. You see, there is a Japanese website, official Japanese website, and on that official Japanese website, they just posted a new official rulebook. And in the new official rulebook, they just posted this Krogunk. Yeah, it's a darkness type. And that's a pretty big deal. Because if we look back at the history of the Pokemon trading card game and Krogunk in particular, we can see that every Krogunk that we've ever had has either been a psychic type or a fighting type. Remember, Krogunk is mixed type. It is poison and fighting. Okay, so clearly the fighting type Krogunk comes in as a fighting type and the poison type comes in as a psychic. That's the way it's been for a while. You see, Diamond and Pearl, the trading card game expansion, brought in a fairly sizable change. And that is that Pokemon that are poison type went from being grass Pokemon to being psychic type. Now, if we take a look at Coughing as an example here, because we've got those pictures to hand, we can see that the Coughing from EX Delta species, or indeed the base set Coughing, they are grass type, but then the Coughing from Great Encounters, the first one after Diamond and Pearl, comes in as a psychic type. Delta species was the last Coughing before Diamond and Pearl. Great Encounters was the last one afterwards. And the change happened in the Diamond and Pearl expansion. Back in the base set, we saw that poison Pokemon like Coughing were grass type. And then we saw, when Diamond and Pearl came in, that they became psychic. Now, we've said that weakness and resistance, etc. are being a little bit swapped around. When we saw the Duraludon recently, we saw that it has a resistance to grass, whereas for a very long time, well, since Diamond and Pearl actually, metal Pokemon had a resistance to psychic. That's kind of their thing. Now, that led a bunch of people to make the sensible, though unproven, prediction, and we did say at the time it was unproven, that maybe we're going to see poison Pokemon going back to being grass. Now, the reason is, if we look at the Metagross from EX Power Keepers, which was right before Diamond and Pearl when we saw the change, they were resistant to grass, and this was when poison Pokemon was still grass. Then in Diamond and Pearl, poison Pokemon became psychic, and metal Pokemon gained a resistance to psychic. So when Duraludon comes in resistant to grass, we go, well, that seems to suggest that poison Pokemon are going to go back to being grass-type Pokemon. Now, the thing to remember is that in the video game, steel Pokemon, which is what they call in the video game, are resistant to grass Pokemon, but it seems like poison has nothing to do with this, because poison Pokemon are becoming darkness type, which is extremely strange. They started off being grass, they moved on to psychic, and now they're going on to be darkness type Pokemon, which I suppose would then give us a bit of an explanation as to why Duraludon and other metal Pokemon do not resist psychic anymore, because that was really there because of poison, metal types or steel types being immune to poison, whereas they're no longer psychic, so why would they resist psychic? Kind of makes sense. Now, if we have a closer look at the Krogunk, we see something else going on here, which is a little bit weird. It's a weakness to fighting. Now, again, you might think, well, in what way is that news, Wassy? Like, seriously. Fighting Pokemon have always been weak to fighting. Well, that's not strictly true. If we have a look at the Sneasel from Neo Genesis, which was the set where we introduced ourselves to Darkness Pokemon, we can see that actually it started off with no weakness whatsoever. Resistance to Psychic, but no weakness whatsoever. Now, of course, they did gain that weakness quite steadily. I mean, you know, if we have a look at the Sneasel from Celestial Storm, which was essentially a reprint of that, it's got that weakness to fighting, and Darkness Pokemon have almost always had that weakness to fighting. The second Sneasel we got was the one in Aquapolis, and that one does come in with that fighting weakness, and again, the resistance to Psychic. So that all seems like, well, Darkness Pokemon are still weak to fighting, Wassy. What's your point? Well, my point is that earlier today I showed you a Galarian Zigzagoon. And in the Galarian Zigzagoon video, I pointed out to you that they are now weak to grass. Now, I didn't dig in on it as much as I might like, because that Zigzagoon's got the same ability as Crobat G, and the fact that Flash Bite is back is actually a really big deal. So though I mentioned the weird weakness, I had to kind of move on and focus on the ability. But if we stop and think about this for a little while now, this is actually a big deal. Because Darkness Pokemon are not weak to grass, or Dark aren't weak to grass in the video game. Now, if anyone's wondering, the explanation is actually surprisingly simple. Grass Pokemon in the trading card game are grass, but they're also bug. Beedrill's a bug. Beedrill's a grass type in the trading card game. So that all makes perfect sense. That's why Zigzagoon and presumably other Dark-type Pokemon are going to be weak to grass moving forward. So essentially our conclusion here seems to be that Poison Pokemon are coming back as Darkness type, which is a third different typing, which in and of itself is very, very strange, but also that they're coming in with a fighting weakness. Do not expect your average Darkness Pokemon to come in with a fighting weakness. Zigzagoon is Darkness/normal in the video games, and a lot of people have pointed out, well, how is this not weak to fighting? Because obviously with normal type weak to fighting and dark type weak to fighting, really, in the games, it's got a 4 times weakness to fighting. We would expect the weakness to fighting. The thing I always tell people about the TCG is they pick a typing and they go with it. All dark Pokemon are weak to X. All grass Pokemon are weak to X. That's the way it works. They don't mix it up within the typing because it would be too confusing. Now, there are a couple of exceptions to this that we've seen in the past. If we take your average Psychic Pokemon, let's use Mew as an example, we see a weakness to Psychic, that's the way they are. But if we take a Ghost Pokemon like Miss Magius, although it is a Psychic type in the TCG, it comes in, instead of being weak to Psychic, it is weak to Darkness and resistant to fighting. Ghost Pokemon are different to regular Psychic Pokemon. They come in as Psychic Pokemon, but with different weakness and resistance. Of course, if we have a look at in DDV, we can see that Psychic Pokemon now come in with a Dark-type weakness, so it is all being mixed around. I will do a proper roundup video for all of this in the not-too-distant future. The other example we've seen, the other exception we've seen, is flying types. So if we see a normal colourless Pokemon, something like a Snorlax for instance, we come in with a weakness to fighting. That's the way normal Pokemon roll. But if we instead look at a flying Pokemon, something like Talonflame, we can see that it has a resistance to fighting and a weakness to lightning. So flying Pokemon come in, and even though they are colourless type, we actually see them coming in with resistance to fighting and a weakness to lightning. And that doesn't just go for colourless Pokemon. Something like Celesteela GX, which is a metal Pokemon, comes in with a weakness to lightning, resistance to fighting, because it is in fact a flying Pokemon, so they brought it in as a metal Pokemon with the weakness and resistance of flying. But they've been the 2 exceptions up to now, Ghost and Flying. Everything else has been very mono, very simple, very easy. I think it is fair to say we've got another exception coming in. Darkness Pokemon, look at Zigzagoon, weak to grass. Poison Pokemon, weak to fighting. Now, you'll also notice that regardless of which type of Darkness Pokemon we look at here, Darkness or Poison, they have lost their resistance to Psychic. That has gone by the wayside. Boo, hiss, etc. It's gone. It probably ain't coming back. Now, we've only seen one Poison Pokemon. Can I be that sure? I'll be honest with you, I feel pretty sure about this, because we're looking at the way Pokemon have handled this in the past, and we're looking at the trends, and it seems like a pretty sensible suggestion. It seems like that's the way it's going to be rolling forward. Darkness Pokemon are weak to grass with no resistance, but Poison Pokemon are coming in as Darkness types and weak to fighting, which means now Ghost, Flying, and Poison are going to be exceptions. It's going to make things a little bit more complicated, but I'm sure somehow, ladies and gentlemen, we will be able to cope just fine. So there we go. Big news in a week of what has frankly been very big news, but this was the kind of thing I wanted to bring in nice and quickly. But I want to know what you think about all of this. Do you like that poison types are now darkness? Do you like that dark/poison are now going to have different weaknesses? How do you feel about it? Go nuts in the comment section. But please do remember the rule. Be nice, would ya? And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't even have any Pokemon in. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.